Admiral Sarah Chung stared at the empty screen in front of her. 3 months had passed since the last message from Deep Space Fleet. 7. 3 months of silence from 12 ships and 3,000 people who had simply vanished into the black. She sat alone in her office on Earth's main space station. Outside the thick windows, she could see the blue curve of her home planet turning slowly beneath them. It looked peaceful from up here, clean and safe. Nothing like the nightmare that was growing in her mind. The official story was simple. Fleet 7 had run into some kind of space storm near the Kepler 442 star system, a natural disaster. These things happen sometimes when humans push too far into unknown space. The families of the lost crew members got medals and money. The news reports lasted exactly 1 week before moving on to other stories, but Sarah knew the truth was much worse. She picked up the datapad that contained the real final messages from Fleet 7, not the cleaned-up versions the public had seen. Not the calm reports about stellar phenomena and equipment failures. These were the raw transmissions that had come through the military's secret channels in the last few hours before the silence began. Her hands shook a little as she played the first recording again. "Command, this is Captain Martinez on the Aurora. We're seeing something out here, something big." The captain's voice was tight with stress. "It's not showing up on normal sensors, but the gravity detectors are going crazy. There's something massive about 2 million kilometers off our port." Sighed. Sarah paused the recording. She had listened to this hundreds of times, but it never got easier. She knew what was coming next. "Command Martinez again. We're getting readings that don't make sense. The computer keeps saying there are structures out there, but we can't see anything. It's like looking at empty space that weighs as much as a moon." A long pause. "Sir, I'm requesting permission to investigate." That permission had come from Admiral Hayes, Sarah's boss. The same Admiral Hayes who had been acting strange for months before Fleet 7 launched. The same Hayes who had insisted the fleet take this particular route to this particular system. She played the next message. "Command, this is Dr. Kim on the science vessel Newton. The energy readings we're getting are impossible. Whatever's out there is putting out more power than our entire fleet. But it's not random energy. There are patterns. It's like a machine, a really big machine." Sarah's stomach turned cold every time she heard that part. Dr. Kim had been one of the smartest people in the space program. If she said something was impossible, it probably was. The next few recordings got worse. "Command, we're seeing movement now. The structure, whatever it is, it's changing. Parts of it are extending toward us. We're pulling back to a safe distance. Command, the structures are following us. They're matching our speed exactly. How is that possible? Command, there are more of them. They're appearing all around us. It's like they were hidden somehow and now they're revealing themselves." Sarah fast-forwarded through several recordings of technical data and confused reports. She stopped at the one that always made her feel sick. "Command, this is Martinez. They're scanning us. We can feel it somehow. It's like someone walking through your brain with a flashlight. The crew is getting sick. Some of them are collapsing." The captain's voice was getting desperate now. "Sir, whatever these things are, they're not natural. This is not a stellar phenomenon. This is not an accident. Someone or something built these things?" The recordings after that got confused and broken. Multiple ships reporting the same impossible readings. Crew members having strange dreams. Equipment failing in ways that made no sense. And then, in the final clear transmission, something that kept Sarah awake at night. "Command, this is Dr. Kim. I've been analyzing the energy patterns from the structures. I found something in our computer databases that matches them. The patterns are identical to readings we took from that thing they found in Antarctica last year. The thing they classified and buried. Command, I think we've been set up." After that, only static. Sarah set down the datapad and rubbed her tired eyes. Dr. Kim's last message had sent her digging through classified files for weeks. What she found had changed everything she thought she knew about her job, her government, and her planet. 6 months before Fleet 7 launched. A research team in Antarctica had found something buried deep in the ice, something that was definitely not human. The discovery had been classified faster than anything Sarah had ever seen. The research team had been split up and assigned to different projects all over the world. Most of the evidence had been locked away in vaults that required presidential permission to open, but Sarah was an admiral in Earth's Space Defense Forces. She had access to files that most people didn't even know existed. Late at night, when the station was quiet and most of the crew was sleeping, she had been reading those files. What she found scared her more than the lost fleet. The Antarctic structure was a machine. A very old machine that had been built by someone who definitely wasn't human. The scientists had managed to activate parts of it before the military shut down their research. When they did, the machine had done something that had triggered automatic defense systems that had been sleeping in Earth's military computers for decades, defense systems that no human had ever written, defense systems that had somehow known exactly what to do when the Antarctic machine woke up. And those same defense systems had planned the route that Fleet 7 had taken to Coupler-442. Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Earth looked so peaceful spinning below her. Most of the people down there had no idea that 12 ships full of their friends and family members had been sent deliberately into danger. They didn't know that something had been found in Antarctica that shouldn't exist. They didn't know that their own military computers contained programs that no human had ever seen before. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, she was going to start asking questions that her superiors definitely didn't want her to ask. She was going to find out who had really sent Fleet 7 to die. She was going to learn what the Antarctic machine was really for. And she was going to discover why Earth's defense computers seemed to know things that no human had ever taught them. Sarah Chun didn't know it yet, but she was about to uncover a truth that would shake humanity to its core. A truth about the real reason the fleet had vanished, and about the terrible choice that Earth's leaders had made to save themselves while sacrificing everyone else. The empty screen in front of her flickered once, displaying an automatic message about the next scheduled supply run to the outer colonies. Sarah stared at it and felt a chill run down her spine, because according to the files she had been reading, there weren't supposed to be any more supply runs. According to the secret plans buried in the classified databases, the outer colonies were about to be abandoned. All of them. The question was why. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in his small apartment staring at files that could get him killed. Outside his window, the lights of Denver glowed in the darkness, but he wasn't thinking about the city. He was thinking about a hole in the ice at the bottom of the world and the thing they had found there 9 months ago. Marcus had been leading the most important archaeological dig in human history. Now he spent his days teaching basic geology to college freshmen and pretending that the most significant discovery ever made had never happened. He picked up a photograph from his desk. It showed him and his team standing next to a massive metal wall that emerged from the Antarctic ice. They were all smiling. None of them knew that within a week their lives would be destroyed and their discovery would be buried under so many classified stamps that it might as well have never existed. Marcus remembered the day they first broke through the ice layer and saw the structure underneath. It had taken them 3 weeks of careful digging to expose even a small section of the wall. The metal was unlike anything on Earth. It didn't rust or corrode. It stayed the same temperature no matter how cold the air around it got. And when they ran tests on it, the results made no sense. The metal was older than human civilization, older than humans themselves. The dating test suggested it had been buried in the ice for over 2 million years, but that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was that the structure was still working. Dr. Sarah Kim, his team's electronics expert, had been the first to notice the energy readings. Faint electrical activity was flowing through the metal walls in patterns that looked almost like computer code. When they followed the energy signatures deeper into the structure, they found rooms filled with machines that hummed quietly in the darkness. Marcus opened another file on his computer. This one contained photos that the military had tried very hard to destroy. Images of a room deep inside the structure where the walls were covered with moving symbols. The symbols changed and shifted like a computer screen, but they were made of light that seemed to come from inside the metal itself. It had taken Sarah 3 days to figure out how to interface their computers with the alien system. When she finally managed it, the results had changed everything they thought they knew about Earth and humanity's place in the universe. The structure was a library and a warning system. And something much more dangerous, the files contained charts that showed the positions of thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Some of those worlds were marked with symbols that the translation program identified as harvested. Others were marked as warned. A few, including Earth, were marked with a symbol that meant protected. But the protection was conditional, according to the files they had decoded. Earth was being watched by something called the Harvest Fleet. The files described them as an automated system created by an ancient civilization to prevent younger species from developing technology that could threaten the galaxy. When a species reached a certain level of advancement, the Harvest Fleet would arrive and reduce their population to manageable levels. The Antarctic structure was part of a galaxy-wide network designed to hide developing civilizations from the Harvest Fleet's sensors. As long as the network was active, Earth would remain invisible. But if the network was ever damaged or shut down, the Harvest Fleet would immediately know where to find humanity. Marcus closed the file and rubbed his eyes. He had been staring at screens for hours, but he couldn't stop. Every time he looked at this information, he found something new and terrible. Like the section that described what happened to harvested worlds. The Harvest Fleet didn't destroy civilizations completely. They were more precise than that. They would arrive at a planet and systematically eliminate exactly 90% of the population, leaving the survivors to rebuild their society from scratch. The process could take hundreds of years, but eventually the survivors would develop advanced technology again. And when they did, the Harvest Fleet would return. It was a cycle that had been repeating for millions of years across the galaxy. Marcus picked up another document. This one was a report he had written during the last week of the dig, before the military arrived to shut everything down. In it, he described the most terrifying discovery of all. They had found a control room deep in the structure. The walls of this room were covered with displays showing the status of similar structures across the galaxy. Most of the displays showed green lights, indicating that the hiding systems were working properly, but some showed red lights. Those were the worlds that had been discovered by the Harvest Fleet, and according to the displays, Earth's protection was failing, the Antarctic structure was damaged. It had been working for 2 million years, but it was finally starting to break down. The energy readings they had detected were actually distress signals. The structure was trying to repair itself, but it needed help from someone who understood its technology. Marcus and his team had been trying to figure out how to fix it. When the military arrived, he remembered that day clearly. They had been working in the control room when the soldiers came down into the structure. The commanding officer had been polite but firm. The dig was being classified for national security reasons. All equipment and records were being confiscated. The team members were being reassigned to different projects immediately. Marcus had tried to explain what they had found. He told the officer about the Harvest Fleet and the protection system and the danger that Earth was in. The officer had listened carefully, then told Marcus that he was suffering from stress and needed psychiatric evaluation. Within 24 hours, Marcus found himself on a plane back to the United States with a new job assignment and a security clearance that prevented him from talking about anything he had seen in Antarctica. His team members were scattered to different continents. Dr. Kim was sent to a research station in Alaska. Dr. Rodriguez was transferred to a university in Japan. Dr. Patel disappeared entirely, and Marcus had never been able to find out where he had gone, but Marcus had been careful. Before the military arrived, he had copied all of their data onto hidden drives. He had memorized the most important parts of the alien files. And he had taken pictures of everything, including the displays in the control room. Those pictures now told a story that made Marcus sick with fear. The red lights on the galaxy map were spreading. More and more worlds were being discovered by the Harvest Fleet, and according to the patterns he could see, the fleet was moving in Earth's direction. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up a news article from 3 months ago. It was about the mysterious disappearance of Deep Space Fleet 7 near the Kepler 442 star system. The official story blamed equipment failure and solar storms, but Marcus knew better. Kepler 442 was one of the systems marked on the alien star charts. It was marked with the symbol for harvested. Fleet 7 hadn't run into equipment failure. They had run into the Harvest Fleet. Marcus stood up and walked to his window. The city lights spread out below him, millions of people going about their lives with no idea that their entire civilization was in danger. They didn't know that the protection system that had kept Earth hidden for 2 million years was breaking down. They didn't know that an ancient enemy was already moving through space toward their world. And they definitely didn't know that their own government had discovered all of this months ago and had decided to keep it secret. Marcus had spent weeks trying to figure out why the military had classified his discovery instead of acting on it. Why weren't they trying to fix the protection system? Why weren't they preparing Earth's defenses? Why had they sent Fleet 7 to a system that they knew was dangerous? Then he found the answer in the classified files he had stolen from the Antarctic base. The military wasn't trying to fix the protection system. They were planning to destroy it completely. They wanted the Harvest Fleet to find Earth, and they wanted it to happen soon while they were ready for it. Marcus picked up his phone and stared at it for a long moment. He had Admiral Chin's contact information. She was one of the few people in the military who might listen to him. But calling her would mean exposing himself. It would mean admitting that he had stolen classified information and hidden it for months. But if he didn't call her, billions of people were going to die. Marcus dialed the number and waited for her to answer. When she did, he took a deep breath and said the words that would change both of their lives forever. Admiral Chun, this is Dr. Marcus Webb. I need to tell you about what we really found in Antarctica. And I need to tell you why Fleet 7 was sent to die. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Titan's Edge mining station and watched the stars. They looked the same as always, tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. But Elena knew that some of those lights were lies. Ships had been disappearing out there for weeks, and the patterns made no sense. Titan's Edge was one of the farthest human settlements from Earth. It orbited a gas giant in a system that most people had never heard of. The station existed for one reason: to mine rare metals from the asteroid belt that surrounded the giant planet. It was dangerous work in a dangerous place, but it paid well enough to attract 2,000 miners and their families. Elena commanded the security force that protected them. 30 officers with light weapons and 2 patrol ships that were older than she was. It wasn't much, but it had always been enough. Pirates rarely bothered with targets this far from the main shipping routes. Until now, Elena looked down at the report in her hands. In the past month, 7 ships had vanished between Titan's Edge and the inner colonies. Not attacked, not destroyed. Just gone, no distress signals, no wreckage, no explanation. The ships simply stopped answering calls and were never seen again. The strange part was the pattern. The disappearances were getting closer to Titan's Edge. Whatever was taking the ships was working its way outward from the direction of Earth, systematically clearing the space lanes. Elena's communicator buzzed. She looked at the screen and saw a message from her sensor operator. "Captain, we have an incoming ship. It's badly damaged and flying erratic. Looks like a courier vessel, but it's not responding to our calls." Elena hurried to the command center. Through the main screen, she could see a small ship limping toward the station. Its hull was blackened and twisted. Parts of it looked like they had been melted and reformed into impossible shapes. "Get a medical team to the docking bay," Elena ordered, "and prepare quarantine protocols. I want to know what did that to their ship before we let anyone aboard." 20 minutes later, Elena stood in the medical bay looking down at the only survivor they had pulled from the courier ship. He was a young man, maybe 25 years old, wearing the uniform of Earth's Deep Space Communications Corps. His name tag read Williams. But what had happened to him made Elena's stomach turn. His left arm was gone, but not cut off or torn away. It looked like it had been dissolved, leaving behind smooth skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His eyes were a different color than they should have been, shifting between blue and silver like liquid metal. The medical scanner couldn't make sense of his vital signs. According to the readings, parts of his body were operating at temperatures that should have killed him. Other parts showed no life signs at all, but they were still moving. Williams had been unconscious when they brought him in, but now his eyes opened and focused on Elena. "Captain," he said, and his voice sounded wrong somehow, like it was coming from far away. "I have a message for you." From Fleet 7, Elena felt her blood turn cold. Fleet 7 had been missing for 3 months. "What's your name, soldier?" she asked gently. "Communications Officer David Williams, Deep Space Fleet 7, Science Vessel Newton." His voice was getting stronger, but it still had that strange, distant quality. "I've been trying to get back to report what happened, but they followed me." Elena pulled up a chair and sat down next to his bed. "Who followed you?" Williams tried to sit up, but Elena gently pushed him back down. When she touched his shoulder, his skin felt cold and slightly damp, like touching wet metal. "The harvesters," Williams said. "That's what Dr. Kim called them before she died. They were waiting for us at Kepler 442, waiting like they knew we were coming." Elena's heart started beating faster. "Tell me what happened." Williams closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they had changed color completely. Now they were silver with flecks of gold that moved like stars. "We dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, just like the mission plan said. Everything looked normal at first, empty space, a few planets, nothing unusual. But then the sensors started picking up massive objects that weren't supposed to be there." Williams paused and took a shaky breath. "They were ships, Captain. Huge ships bigger than anything humans have ever built. They were just sitting there in space, waiting. And as soon as we arrived, they started moving toward us." Elena felt sick. How many ships? Dozens, maybe hundreds. It was hard to tell because they didn't show up on visual sensors. "We could only detect them by their gravity signatures. Dr. Kim said they were using some kind of cloaking technology that bent light around them." Williams tried to sit up again, and this time Elena didn't stop him. When he moved, she could see that the skin on his back had the same strange metallic shimmer as his arm. "Captain Martinez ordered us to retreat, but it was too late." The alien ships were faster than anything I've ever seen. They surrounded our entire fleet in minutes. Then they started scanning us. "Scanning how?" Williams touched his chest, and Elena could see that his hand was changing too. His fingers were longer than they should have been, and his fingernails looked like they were made of the same silver material as his eyes. "It felt like being dissected while you were still alive," he said. "Like something was reaching into your mind and pulling out everything you knew. Your memories, your knowledge, your fears. They learned everything about us. Where we came from, how many people lived on Earth, what our technology was like." Elena stood up and backed away from the bed. Williams was changing as she watched. His skin was becoming more metallic, and strange patterns were appearing on his arms and face. "But that wasn't the worst part," Williams continued. "The worst part was when Dr. Kim figured out why they were there. She managed to hack into their communication systems for a few minutes before they killed her. What she found ... Williams shook his head. "They weren't just waiting for us, Captain. They were expecting us. Someone had told them we were coming." "That's impossible," Elena said, but even as she said it, she remembered the reports about ships disappearing in a pattern that led straight toward Titan's edge. Williams looked directly at her, and now his entire face had taken on that metallic shimmer. "Is it, Captain? Think about it. How did Fleet 7 end up at Kepler 442? Who chose that destination? Who planned the route?" Elena felt her knees go weak. Williams was right. Military expeditions didn't just pick random star systems to explore. Someone on Earth had specifically sent Fleet 7 to Kepler 442. Dr. Kim downloaded their star charts before she died, Williams continued. The harvesters have been systematically destroying human colonies for months, but they're not attacking randomly. They're following a plan. They know exactly where every human settlement is located. They know our ship routes, our communication codes, our defense capabilities. Williams tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't support him. Elena could see why. His lower body was changing too, becoming something that was only partly human. Someone on Earth gave them that information, Captain. Someone in our own government sold out the entire human race. And now they're coming here. Elena felt the room spinning around her. Coming here? To Titan's Edge? Williams nodded, and when he did, Elena could see that his neck had strange markings on it that pulsed with faint light. I'm not really human anymore, Captain. They did something to me when I escaped. I can feel them in my mind sometimes. I know what they're thinking. And what they're thinking is that Titan's Edge is next on their list. Elena's communicator buzzed with an urgent signal. She looked down at it and saw a message from her sensor operator. Captain, we're detecting multiple large objects approaching the system. They're not showing up on visual, but the gravity sensors are going crazy. Ada approximately 6 hours. Elena looked back at Williams, but he was changing faster now. His human features were disappearing, replaced by something that looked like it was made of living metal. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind blowing through empty corridors. You have to warn Earth, Captain. You have to tell them that the harvesters are coming, but more importantly, you have to tell them that someone in their own government is helping the enemy. Someone very high up in the chain of command. Williams collapsed back onto the bed, his transformation accelerating. Elena could see that he was becoming something else entirely, something that belonged to the creatures that had destroyed Fleet 7. Who? Elena asked desperately. Who's helping them? William's eyes flickered one last time, and for a moment they looked almost human. Again, the same people who sent us to die, he whispered. The same people who are planning to abandon the outer colonies. Admiral Hayes, General Morrison, Secretary Blackwood. They made a deal with the harvesters. They're going to let them take 90% of humanity in exchange for being allowed to escape with the rest. Elena felt her world collapsing around her. That's not possible. Our own leaders wouldn't. But Williams wasn't listening anymore. His transformation was complete. What lay on the medical bed was no longer human. It was something that belonged to the creatures that were coming to destroy Titan's Edge. Elena backed toward the door, her mind racing. 6 hours until the harvesters arrived. 2,000 people on the station who had no idea. Commander James Park had been staring at the same sensor reading for 3 hours, and it still made no sense. Luna Station's Deep Space Monitoring Array was the most advanced early warning system humanity had ever built. It could detect ships moving at the edge of the solar system days before they arrived at Earth. But what Park was seeing on his screens shouldn't have been possible. There were holes in space, not black holes or empty regions, but actual holes where stars should have been visible but weren't. The computer kept insisting that the missing stars were still there, but something was blocking their light. Something huge and invisible that was moving toward Earth at impossible speed. Park rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the readings again. Luna Station orbited Earth's moon, giving him the best view of deep space that any human had ever had. He had been watching the sensors for 15 years, tracking asteroids and space debris and the occasional alien probe that wandered through the solar system. But he had never seen anything like this. His assistant, Lieutenant Torres, walked over with a fresh cup of coffee and a worried expression. Commander, we just received a priority transmission from Titan's Edge. Captain, Vasquez is requesting immediate contact with Admiral Chun. She says it's about the harvesters. Park felt his stomach drop. Titan's Edge was one of the most remote human settlements. If something had reached them, it meant the threat was much closer than anyone had realized. Put the transmission through to my station, Park ordered. A few minutes later, Captain Vasquez's face appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted and scared. Behind her, Park could see people running back and forth, loading evacuation ships. "Commander Park, thank God," Vasquez said. "I need you to contact Admiral Chun immediately. We have a survivor from Fleet 7, and what he told us changes everything. The creatures that destroyed the fleet are called harvesters, and they're working with someone in our own government." Park felt the world shift around him. "Captain, are you certain about this?" "Commander, they're coming. They'll be here in less than 4 hours. And they know everything about our defenses, our ship movements, our population centers. Someone gave them detailed intelligence about humanity." Park's hands were shaking as he started recording the conversation. "Captain, I need you to tell me everything the survivor said." For the next 10 minutes, Vasquez described William's transformation and his revelations about the conspiracy involving Admiral Hayes and other higher-ranking officials. As she talked, Park felt pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place in his mind. When she finished, Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Captain, I think I know why they sent Fleet 7 to Kepler 442, and I think I know what's coming next." Park turned to his sensor displays and started pulling up data he had been collecting for months. 3 months ago, right after Fleet 7 disappeared, I started noticing strange patterns in deep space. Objects moving in formation but invisible to normal sensors. I thought it was equipment malfunction at first. He showed Vasquez a star chart that displayed the solar system with dozens of red markers scattered throughout it. "These markers show where I've detected gravity anomalies over the past few weeks. They're not random. They're forming a perimeter around Earth." Vasquez leaned closer to her screen. "How many objects are we talking about?" "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. And they're all massive. Each one has the gravity signature of something the size of a small moon." Park switched to another display. "But here's the really terrifying part. Look at this." The new display showed energy readings that Park had been tracking for days. These are power signatures from the invisible objects. The energy output is enormous, enough to power entire cities. But the patterns, Park highlighted specific sections of the energy readings. These patterns match readings that were taken from something in Antarctica last year, something that was immediately classified by the military. Vasquez went pale. The Antarctic structure. Williams mentioned that Dr. Kim found connections between the harvesters and something on Earth. Park nodded grimly. "Captain, I think our own government activated something in Antarctica that called the harvesters here. And I think they've been planning this for months." Before Vasquez could respond, every alarm on Luna Station started screaming. Park spun around to his sensor displays and felt his blood turn to ice. The invisible objects around Earth were decloaking. Across every screen in the command center, massive ships began appearing out of empty space. They were unlike anything in human design, looking more like geometric puzzles made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The smallest ones were the size of Earth's largest cities. The biggest ones dwarfed entire continents. "Dear God," Torres whispered, "how many are there?" Park was frantically working his controls, trying to get an accurate count. "Computer shows over 2,000 ships, and they're all in perfect position to attack every major human settlement simultaneously." But even as Park watched the massive fleet reveal itself, something else caught his attention. A signal was broadcasting from Earth's surface, transmitted from somewhere in the North American military command centers. The signal was using protocols that Park had never seen before, but his computers were automatically responding to it. "Torres, are you seeing this?" Park pointed at the communication display. "Something on Earth is talking to the alien fleet, and our own systems are relaying the messages." Torres leaned over Park's shoulder and read the data scrolling across the screen. "Commander, these communication codes are built into our computers. They've been there for years, just waiting to be activated." Park felt sick as he realized what that meant. Someone has been planning this for a very long time. The harvesters didn't just find us, they were invited. On his screen, Captain Vasquez was watching her own sensors as harvester ships appeared around Titan's edge. "Commander, they're here, but they're not attacking yet. They're just, waiting. Park switched his displays to show the global situation. Harvester ships had appeared in orbit around every human world, every space station, every major settlement. They were close enough to attack, but they weren't moving. They're waiting for orders, Park realized. Someone is coordinating this entire operation. His computer chimed with an incoming transmission. The source was listed as Earth Defense Command. But when Park opened the message, Admiral Hayes' face appeared on his screen. "All stations, this is Admiral Hayes with Emergency Protocol Lazarus," Hayes said calmly. "By order of the Global Security Council, all outer colonies are to be immediately evacuated. Earth Defense Forces are implementing a strategic withdrawal to protect core population centers." Park stared at the screen in horror. Protocol Lazarus was something he had heard whispered about in classified briefings. It was a plan to abandon the outer colonies in case of overwhelming alien attack, preserving Earth and the inner system at the cost of millions of lives. But Hayes wasn't finished. All military personnel are ordered to assist with the evacuation of essential personnel only. Transport capacity is limited, so priority will be given to individuals with critical skills and genetic diversity markers. Torres grabbed Park's arm. "Commander, he's talking about abandoning 90% of the people in the outer colonies. That's almost 1 billion people." Park was about to respond when another transmission came through, this one from Admiral Chun. Her face appeared on a split screen next to Hayes, and she looked furious. "All stations, disregard the previous orders," Chun said. "Admiral Hayes is operating without authorization." "I repeat, Admiral Hayes is acting without the approval of the full Command Council. Do not implement Protocol Lazarus." Hayes' image flickered, and when it stabilized, his expression had turned cold. "Admiral Chun has been relieved of command for refusing to follow emergency protocols. All stations will comply with Lazarus immediately or face court-martial." Park watched in amazement as his own commanders turned against each other while an alien fleet surrounded Earth, but then he noticed something else on his sensors. The harvester ships were moving again, but not toward human settlements. They were positioning themselves between the human worlds and the paths that evacuation ships would need to take. "They're not here to destroy us," Park said suddenly. "They're here to trap us. They're making sure that no one can escape except through specific routes." On his screen, Captain Vasquez was frantically coordinating the evacuation of Titan's Edge. "Commander, the harvester ships are letting some of our transport vessels through, but they're blocking others. It's like they have a list of who they want to save and who they want to leave behind." Park's blood ran cold as he understood what was happening. "Captain, they do have a list. Someone gave them a list of exactly which humans to save and which ones to sacrifice." Park started pulling up classified files that he had never been authorized to see, using emergency access codes that had been programmed into Luna Station's computers years ago. What he found made him feel sick. Project Lazarus wasn't just an evacuation plan, it was a selection program. Over the past 5 years, every human in the colonies had been secretly evaluated and categorized. Some were marked as essential genetic stock. Others were marked as expendable population. The harvesters weren't just randomly harvesting humans. They were. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the emergency command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface and watched her world fall apart. On the screens around her, she could see the harvester fleet surrounding every human settlement in the solar system. Massive alien ships hung in space like dark angels of death, waiting for the signal to begin their terrible work. But the signal wasn't coming from the aliens. It was coming from the room next door, where Admiral Hayes and the Shadow Government had been planning humanity's destruction for years. "Ma'am, we're receiving transmissions from Dr. Webb, Captain Vasquez, and Commander Park," reported Lieutenant Davis, Chun's communications officer. "They're all confirming what we suspected. The harvesters were invited here." Chun nodded grimly. 3 hours ago, she had received Webb's call about the Antarctic structure. 2 hours ago, Vasquez had contacted her about the Fleet 7 survivor. 1 hour ago, Park had broadcast the truth about Protocol Lazarus to the entire solar system. Now she knew the full scope of the betrayal. "Status report on the evacuation ships," Chun ordered. "Approximately 200 vessels have been cleared for departure by the Harvester fleet," Davis replied. "But they're only allowing ships that carry passengers from the Priority Alpha list. Everyone else is being turned back or destroyed." Chun looked at the Priority Alpha list on her screen. 2 million names. Politicians, military officers, scientists, wealthy corporate leaders, and their families. The people that Hayes and his conspirators had decided were worth saving. Out of 8 billion humans in the solar system, only 2 million would be allowed to escape. The rest would be left for the harvest. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from the Harvester command ship," Davis announced. Chun straightened her uniform and faced the main screen. When the image cleared, she found herself looking at something that was both alien and strangely familiar. The creature on the screen was tall and thin, with metallic skin that shifted colors like oil on water. But its face was almost human, as if someone had taken human features and made them perfect and terrible. "I am Designation 7 of the Harvest." "Authority?" the creature said in a voice that sounded like it was coming from inside Chun's own head. "You are Admiral Chun of the Human Military Forces." "That's correct," Chun replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your species' governing council has fulfilled the terms of the agreement. The protection barrier around your world has been deactivated. The required intelligence about your population and defenses has been provided. The selection process has been completed." Chun felt sick, but she forced herself to ask the question she had to ask. What exactly is the agreement? Designation 7 tilted its head in a way that reminded Chun of a curious bird. "Your leaders contacted us 18 months ago through the communication system they discovered in the ancient facility. They offered to surrender 90% of your species in exchange for the survival of a selected group. And you agreed to this?" "We are not destroyers, Admiral Chun. We are gardeners. For millions of years, we have maintained the balance of life in this galaxy. When a species grows too large and too dangerous, we reduce their numbers to sustainable levels. Your leaders simply chose to cooperate with this process rather than resist it." Chun stared at the creature's perfect, inhuman face. "How many species have you done this to?" "Thousands. Most resist and must be pacified by force." "Your species is unusual in that a portion of your leadership chose cooperation. This makes the process more efficient for everyone involved." Before Chun could respond, the door to the command center burst open. Admiral Hayes walked in, flanked by 6 soldiers in black uniforms that Chun didn't recognize. Hayes looked calm and confident, as if everything was going according to plan. "Admiral Chun, you're relieved of command," Hayes announced. "By order of the Emergency Council, I'm taking control of all remaining Earth Defense Forces." Chun didn't move from her position. "There is no Emergency Council, Hayes. You and your conspirators don't speak for humanity." Hayes smiled coldly. "We speak for the part of humanity that's going to survive. The rest are acceptable losses." On the screen, Designation 7 watched the exchange with interest. "Admiral Hayes, are you prepared to begin the final phase of the agreement?" Hayes turned to the alien creature and nodded. "All Priority Alpha personnel are aboard the evacuation fleet. The ships are ready for departure. You may begin the harvest." Chun felt something break inside her chest. "Hayes, there are 6 billion people on Earth alone, millions more in the colonies. You're murdering our entire species." "I'm saving our species," Hayes replied. "The 2 million people on those ships represent the best of humanity. Scientists, leaders, artists, genetic diversity. They'll rebuild civilization somewhere safe, away from the Harvester's territory." "And what about the families of your soldiers?" Chun pointed at the black uniformed guards. "What about your own children? Are they all on the Priority Alpha list?" For the first time, Hayes looked uncomfortable. One of his guards, a young sergeant, lowered his weapon slightly. "Sir," the sergeant said quietly, "my wife and daughter are on Mars Colony. You said they would be evacuated." Hayes didn't look at the sergeant. "There wasn't room for everyone, Sergeant Morrison. Sacrifices had to be made." Chun saw her chance. Sergeant, your commander lied to you. Check the evacuation lists. Check. The passenger manifests. See if your family's names are there. The sergeant hesitated, then pulled out his communication device. After a few moments of typing, his face went pale. Sir, they're not on any of the lists. None of the enlisted personnel's families are on the lists. The lists were classified. For security reasons, Hayes said quickly. Your families will be evacuated in the second wave. Chun shook her head. There's no second wave, Sergeant. Look at the alien fleet. Do you see any ships leaving? The only vessels departing are the ones carrying Hayes and his friends. The sergeant looked around at his fellow guards. Chun could see the doubt spreading across their faces. On the screen, Designation 7 was growing impatient. Admiral Hayes, we require immediate confirmation to begin the harvest. Our schedule must be maintained. Hayes turned back to the screen. Confirmed. Begin the harvest. No, Chun shouted. She lunged for the communication controls, but Hayes' guards moved to stop her. Sergeant Morrison hesitated for a crucial second, then stepped aside, allowing Chun to reach the controls. Chun activated the emergency broadcast system, transmitting to every human settlement in the solar system. This is Admiral Chun. Do not comply with evacuation orders from Admiral Hayes. He has betrayed humanity to the aliens. All military personnel, all civilians, prepare to resist. We will not go quietly into the dark. Hayes pulled out his sidearm and pointed it at Chun. You're condemning billions of people to death. You already did that, Chun replied. I'm giving them a chance to fight back. Before Hayes could pull the trigger, the lights in the command center flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked. In a few seconds later, bathing everything in red light. What's happening? Hayes demanded. Lieutenant Davis was frantically working his controls. Sir, we're receiving signals from all over the solar system. The colonies are fighting back. Mars. Colony has activated hidden defense platforms. The asteroid miners are using their ships as weapons. Even Earth's civilian populations are attacking the Harvester ground forces. On the screen, Designation 7 looked genuinely surprised. This is highly irregular. The agreement specified. Full cooperation from your species, Chun smiled grimly. The agreement was made by traitors, not by humanity. We don't honor deals made by people who sold out their own species. Around the solar system, the impossible was happening. Humans who had been marked for death were refusing to die quietly. Mining ships rammed harvester vessels. Colony defense forces opened fire on ships 1,000 times their size. Even the evacuation transports carrying the Priority Alpha passengers were turning around, their crews unwilling to abandon their friends and families. Dr. Webb's voice came through the communication system from his hidden location on Earth. Admiral Chun, I've managed to reactivate part of the Antarctic protection system. It won't hide us anymore, but it might be able to disrupt the Harvester fleet's coordination. Captain Vasquez's voice followed from Titan's edge. Admiral, my people have figured out how to use the mining equipment as weapons. We're holding them off for now. Commander Park's transmission was weaker, coming from Luna Station as it fought against impossible odds. The outer colonies are coordinating their resistance. We can't win, but we can make them pay for every life they take. On the screen, Designation 7 was consulting with other Harvester commanders. When it turned back to the humans, its expression had changed. This level of resistance is unacceptable, it said. The harvest will be suspended. Your species will be quarantined until we can determine how to proceed. Hayes looked panicked. But we had an agreement. You promised safe passage. For the Priority Alpha group? The agreement was based on your assurance that resistance would be minimal, Designation 7 replied coldly. Your species is proving too dangerous to process using standard procedures. We will return in 100 years when you have had time to develop more cooperative attitudes. The alien transmission cut off, and through the command centers,